The last thing we're going to look at with jQuery selector plugins is the concept of using the each iterator versus not having to use the each iterator. And in the course of doing that, we're going to explore a few other functions of jQuery or a few other capabilities and methods of jQuery that might be useful when you're writing all kinds of code, not just plugins. So basically, the idea behind each within a plugin is that we already know that selectors already act on collections, right? If I select all the H4 elements on a page, and then I call this CSS method on them, that CSS method is going to act on each and every H4 on the page. That's how jQuery works. So if I'm writing something like our highlight plugin, I can see that inside I only have to write code that deals with each matched element, right? Because that's what jQuery is giving me, and this makes it very simple to write plugins that do cool things. It applies to all the elements in the result set. Now, in some cases, I may want to do something inside that plugin that's not strictly on the result set. Maybe I want to traverse within that result set and find something else. Or I'm doing some sort of calculations that are individual to each of the items. You'll know the case when you see it, and we're going to do an example that illustrates it right now. So I'm going back to our jQuery plugin code, and here I have my highlight plugin just like I had before, and I've moved it to the bottom of the file now so it's not in our way. And what we're going to do is we're going to enhance the functionality of our little collection of plugins here by adding a new plugin called Show Links. Now the Show Links plugin is going to do something sort of similar to what our bookmarklet did, right? Traverse looking for A tags and then add the URL to the text of the tag so it's visible on the page. But actually what we're going to do in this one is a little different. We're going to create a Show Links plugin that will actually look for A tags within whatever matched set we give it. So if we were to go to the page we've been using here, for example, and I were to jump into the debugger here so we can see the HTML elements, we can see, let's select one of these links. We can see that these links live within LIs and they live within ULs. So let's say I just wanted to make it so that only links within ULs got this highlighting treatment, got this URL show links treatment. So that's what we're going to do in this Show Links plugin. Now you can see I've already framed it out. I've done the self-invoking function, and I've added the Show Links property to FN. And what we're going to do is figure out from inside here, whatever kind of element I've been given, how do I find the A tags within it? Well, I'm already inside, and I know I have this, which is going to represent each of the matched elements, which, using this code, is a UL. How do I find the A's within a UL given this? This is a traversal problem. And generally speaking, a jQuery selector is great when you're putting together an expression. In this case, we're already given an element, and we have to look within it for something else. So we're going to go and use a new to us jQuery method. And if we go down here and we look for traversing, we can actually look and see that, well, there's a find. I mean, there's a few things in here that might be helpful, but I'm going to go for find because what we want to do is find the descendants of each element in the current set of matched element filtered by a selector. So basically, when we use this find method, we pass it a selector just like the general jQuery object works, except it's going to start searching from where we already are, from wherever we attach this find method. So this looks like what we want. So what we're going to do is actually use the find method on our matched element, and we're going to find all the A tags that are inside it, right? So I've set a variable called A. Could have called it anything. I'm calling it A. And we're looking for all the A tags inside this thing. Now this thing right now is going to be a UL, but I could have passed it a div, I could have passed it a class name, we could pass it anything we want. Whatever it is that we selected with our original query, we're going to find all the anchor tags inside of it. So now that we've found all the anchor tags inside of it, we want to append the href, right, property. And one way that we could do that is simply, for all these matched A's, we will call the each method, jQuery's each method, right? Because A is a jQuery collection of all these found A's. and we are going to call this function for each of them, and all it does, we turn that into a jQuery object, right? Inside here, this is an HTML document object, HTML element. We're going to turn it into a jQuery object, and then we're going to append a span that contains the link. And by doing this, we should be able to see, when I reload this page, all the URLs appear right after the links, just as we intended them to. Now, I did that with UL. I could have done it with div. It turns out there are no links inside of divs. I could have done it with the document, right? Let's try that. And now they all appear again. So it's using the selector that I put in here in order to determine what it is that's going to, where the anchor tags are going to get found. Now, you'll notice that this is not a very well behaved one because it doesn't return anything. If I try and stick highlight on the end of this as well, and I go in here, it's actually not going to work, and it's going to throw an error because highlight is not a property of undefined, because undefined is what this show links method returns. So if I wanted to, I could say return, and now it's going to return the results of that each, which is going to be all the matched anchor tags. Now, interestingly, what I'm actually returning here is this result set. It's the jQuery object that was represented by A. I'm not returning the general jQuery object that represents whatever I selected here. If I select ULs here, and then inside there I select A's and I return that A selection, I'm only highlighting A. Watch what would happen if I took this return statement and I did what might be better behavior for a jQuery plugin would be to return the original selection, which was the ULs. If I do that, I am going to get different results. I've selected the entire unordered list elements, and that's what we're highlighting. So depending, I got to be careful what I return here. By returning this selection, that kind of makes the chaining work more like what you'd expect. I'm going to go ahead and comment that out right now just so we don't have to be distracted by the look of it. But so the return value, we're preserving some chainability of one kind or another. Now this is kind of ugly. Let's go ahead and reload this. Okay, let's save that and then reload this. Okay. This is kind of ugly. It's hard to read. There's too much stuff on the page. So what if I wanted to make it so that these links don't show up until I mouse over the links? If this URL doesn't appear until I mouse over the link, that certainly would make it better. So the first thing I would do in order to make that happen is I would hide this span at the time that it's generated. Now I could do that. I could just say style equals display, display none. And that actually should make it. What did I do wrong? Oh, I used double quotes. These should be single quotes. So we make those single quotes, and we come in here, and now you can see, we can go to the elements and see that these spans are here, but they're hidden, right? So the next thing we need to do is make it so that when we hover over the link, it appears. Now we've already seen the hover method that's part of jQuery. Basically what we want to do on the end of this is append a hover, right? Because this is going to return, we can chain these things, it's going to return the jQuery object that we're working with. And so if we want to make the hover work, we know we need to pass this two methods, right? Let's go back and look at jQuery API documentation. Let's just search in the page and find hover. And if I bring that up, it takes two functions, the mouse in handler and the mouse out handler. So what we're going to do is go back to here, and I just happen to have these ready. And if I put these two functions in, here's the first one. We're just going to, well, we're going to find again, right? We have to find the span that's inside this A tag and toggle it. And then when the mouse goes out, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to find the span that's inside this A tag, and we're going to toggle it. right? We've added this span inside the A tag, and find is the way we have to get from one element. That's how we traverse from one element to another using jQuery. So this functionality should be complete. If I reload this page, sure enough, I can mouse over these links and the URLs appear next to them as we go. It might actually be possible to do this particular one without the use of each, but because I used find within the plugin, I thought I would use each as well to demonstrate how that's done. And you can see how we use the chaining and the return and everything else to make this work. And it's kind of pretty cool functionality. Somebody ought to do this. This ought to be available somewhere. Well, I guess it is.